All right. We'll go ahead and get kicked off. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. This is the third in our installment of the Meet the Candidate series. Today, we're pleased to have Jonathan Huskey, one of our neighbors, joining us. He's going to give us a little bit of background on who he is, why he's running, what he wants to accomplish. We'll have Q&A for those of you who've been on this before. What we'd ask is just raise your hand. You can either do that in front of the camera or use the raise hand feature. And what we'll do is we'll call on you and we'll try to keep the conversation moving. We just ask that as we go through the agenda, that we want to make sure that we can get as many questions as possible. Obviously, give Jonathan a chance to fully answer them and clarify if need be. But we'll reserve about the last 10 minutes for the last question and for him to go ahead and close out and have any final thoughts. And then we'll adjourn sharply here just before 8. So some ground rules, like I said, if you've been on this before, we just ask that you use the raise hand feature. That way we're not talking over each other. Want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to ask questions. So, feel free to ask a follow-up if there's the answer spurs another part of the question, or if it didn't answer your question. And we would just ask that as you go through this, for the folks that are asking questions, as well as for Jonathan, let's just make sure that everybody here treats each other as neighbors. We want to make sure that there's that everybody here is respectful of one another, and that we can certainly disagree, but make sure that everything stays respectful. And then just if you're not following those rules, we may boot you off. So with that, I will go ahead and turn this over. So, Jonathan, thank you for taking the time today to speak with us. Really appreciate it. I'll turn it over to you for just a bit of whatever you'd like to share with the group. And then from there, we'll go ahead and I'll kick off the first question while people think through what they may want to ask.
Sure. Well, thank you, Nate, and thank you, Karen, and everybody who's on the line here. I appreciate that we are neighbors, both literally and figuratively here in terms of what we're about. I'll just give you a little bit of my general who I am and why I'm here kind of speech, and then I'll quickly get off that to talk about our neighborhood and just generally how I have gotten to the place that I am, both in my campaign, but also in my learning about issues that matter to people who live in neighborhoods like ours, which are both wonderful and awesome, and also in some way threatened by overdevelopment and, moneyed interest. So I moved here 12 years ago from Arlington. Our second child had just been born, and we were desperate to find a place to live, quite honestly, that we wouldn't necessarily looking to buy, but we would love to buy. And so I really settled on the Delray area and knew we probably couldn't afford a large, one of the bigger homes, and lucked into a townhouse in Warwick Village. And we couldn't afford that either, but we went ahead and made it happen. And so we've been here for 12 years. It has been a big part of the neighborhood itself has been a big part of my family's social life, our identity. We don't drive a lot because we love having everything here. So we are big fans of Delray and Warwick Village and appreciate what it means to so many people. I did not plan to run for city council. I did not want to run for city council. I actively asked people to run for city council, and there's a couple of different reasons for that, but I ended up deciding to run because nobody else was able to take the time that they need, do the things that they knew would have to be done in order to run for city council, and because no one else who was running for city council was giving much thought or skepticism to the Potomac Yard Arena. I was on December 13th, just flabbergasted and shocked by people that I had known, that I had supported on city council, who decided to sit on a stage. My kid's asking me what to do with the water that's boiling. I'll figure that out. Don't worry about it. Okay. Is it pasta on? Okay, great. Perfect. So, I had supported Justin Wilson for his political career. I had been supportive of most of the people on council. And so I just felt it was so unreasonable of a proposal that obviously these folks who I considered to be progressives would not in the end support something like this. And it just didn't happen. And I don't really know why it didn't happen, but it didn't. So I decided to drop into this race in late March, started off raising a little bit of money, and then started off into neighborhoods and learning that not only was the arena something that was really animating people even then, but all these other issues that were animating people to make them feel like they just weren't being heard very well. So I'll give you a little bit of background on who I am as a politician, I guess, which is part of my professional life. I am a lefty. I'm a progressive. I am not a conservative Democrat. I am a very liberal Democrat. I work on justice issues. I work to raise taxes on rich people. I've worked over 20 years to get people the unions that they need and deserve and the contracts that will help their families. There is, I don't think, anybody in this council race who is more progressive than I am. But I live in a neighborhood where there are folks who are claiming that our neighborhood is the solution in some ways to affordable housing around this town. And I want the reality to set in that you have to not just rely on the private sector. We've got to invest more money into affordable housing, and that the idea that eliminating single family zones without any affordability attached to that, any requirements, just wasn't going to work. And so I am learning a lot about I'm learning every time I talk to somebody new, and I appreciate that. I don't have a background in zoning, development, design, architecture, historic preservation. That is not something I gave a ton of thought to before this campaign. But I know it's front and center in a lot of important issues in the city. So you're going to have to, I hope, if you will consider voting for me, give me a little bit of time and grace to understand some of these, hard questions about how we grow in this city. And I'm going to endeavor that if I get through the primary, I'm going to be ready to go for the general and be ready to talk more about those issues in specific, so that I am able to do and understand how my personal views around development and the imbalance of corporate interest and the interest of everybody else in town are put together. That's really it. I view a politician's role to show people their values and what kind of person they are and how they would operate. And that's what I intend to do with this campaign in the primary. And then I'm going to have to make sure that I learn all the stuff that makes this city go, and apply those values to those policy decisions. So I'll stop there and invite questions. I'm really excited about this. This is the first time I've had a meeting with fellow neighbors in my campaign, on the campaign. So I'm happy to chat about anything that you want to, or what Nate and Karen want us to talk about. But it's good to be here, and I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for taking the time and that introduction. So why don't we just start off with, you talked a little bit about development, and as you're aware, Save Delray really came to be when a bunch of us neighbors saw what was proposed at 2525, and were really alarmed by a developer buying up large swaths of land at a greatly inflated price, and publicly stating that they were waiting to see, quote, what the city would do. We now see them turning those properties over for sale now that they can't be developed. So talk to me a little bit about how you would approach, there's currently a process where they're reviewing a phase 2 of zoning for housing, looking at more changes. Kind of how would you approach that, and what would be your philosophy around that type of development now that you've seen what zoning for housing in the first iteration has done, knowing that we have the second round coming up during this council term?
Yeah. Well, I just want to be clear on my position on the first iteration of zoning for housing. I get where they're coming from, and I agree, and it is part of my professional life is to fight for housing justice and to fix the white supremacy that was built into our housing codes, just like it is in lots of other things. I particularly work on taxes. There's a lot of tax policy that started during Jim Crow, and it was wrong then. It was built to keep white people in power, and it continues. Those policies continue to this day. So I understand and I agree, and I am not interested in doing anything that furthers injustice. That is not what I'm about. But I am about making sure that the policy fits the need. And so I support all of the other zoning for housing policies, except for the elimination of single family zones, because it doesn't, we are the people who know this best. What will happen in these other neighborhoods is what is happening in our neighborhood, with these teardowns that become duplexes that become just as expensive as they would the single family home that was there. And it is not my position to say whether or not that should happen. These people are going to be our neighbors. They're not bad people. I'm not saying that's wrong. I am saying that is not what the policy was intended to do. And therefore they've got some accounting to do for that position. So my campaign is to bring that truth, I think, out. We need to make sure that we are not showing or asking or looking like opponents of this don't want renters in their neighborhoods, don't want certain people in their neighborhoods. That is not what this is about. It certainly is not for me. It is about making sure that people who need help actually get it on housing. And if you need help to finance your $2.6 million home, I'm not interested in a policy prescription for that. Like, that's good luck, but that's not what I'm going to be focused on. So in terms of the second phase, I would like to revise or rescind the zoning for the elimination of single family zoning, unless there is components to it that actually lead to home ownership or long-term stability of those neighborhoods. I have no idea what they're cooking up for the second phase in terms of large scale development. I believe there's an interest in extending the high density zones, perhaps, and maybe y'all can tell me more about that. But my focus is on neighborhoods, small businesses, and working families, and that's who I'm putting ahead of businesses and developers, and even frankly people who are in the market for $1.5 million homes. I'm happy that you can find one in Alexandria. I love that you want to be our neighbor. I'm not worried about you as a city council person. Does that make sense? And I know we have questions in the queue, so I'll stop.
Right on. Does anybody have a question? And otherwise, I can ask one more here. Okay, Deborah, go ahead. You're on mute. So, yeah. Oh, you're still on mute.
I'd be interested. What you reference white supremacist policies today in Alexandria. Can you tell us what some of those white supremacy policies are?
Well, there is a legacy of white supremacy in housing policy, redlining.
I don't mean the legacy. I mean what's going on today.
That is what I mean, the legacy of that, right? Like, so you see that there are not nearly as many Black people in certain neighborhoods because of not just one, but a number of policies that contributed to that. Now, that's it. That there are lots of other injustices and economic problems that have also led to that. I'm not suggesting anybody is who is living in a single family neighborhood is a white supremacist or upholding white supremacy. What I'm suggesting is that there is good reason to worry about neighborhoods and the access to those neighborhoods from a historical perspective. That is what the Housing for All initiative was about. And I think it was certainly a good initiative. What I'm suggesting is that eliminating single family zoning doesn't do anything to fix that kind of injustice. And so since it didn't do that, they should either be cognizant of that fact or shouldn't have done it, because it doesn't even bring in a lot of new units. It's like 150 to 180 over 10 years. That is juice not worth a squeeze, in my opinion. And so it was more of a ideological pronouncement of what a neighborhood should look like and be that I don't think is appropriate for a city council to make. Does that answer, Deborah?
I will have more. Yeah, I don't want to hog.
And Deborah, there was an article in Alexandria Now, I think it was last week. I'll put in the chat, which is the Housing for All component of the published set of deeds, which of course came out way after zoning for housing. So clearly not the forefront of that conversation.
Thank you.
Go ahead and open it up to anyone else. I think Carol beat you to it, Aaron. So Carol and then Aaron.
Jonathan, thanks so much for talking to us tonight. I'm a lawyer and I'm not licensed in this state, and I have so much difficulty with understanding how we can do what we need to do to have more affordable housing given the Dillon rule in the state. And I was wondering, I've been waiting for someone to address these issues. I'm on the Historic Alexandria Resources Commission. I am also a supporter and a volunteer for the Historic Black Elks Lodge on North Henry Street. You probably see a sign on it between Queen and Cameron, one of the most endangered historic places in the state. It's a Jim Crow era. They had to start their own Elks Lodge because the white Elks wouldn't let them join theirs. But I've gone and testified before the Planning Commission, before City Council many times, and I can tell you, people who I know have come to me afterwards and said, "Oh, I thought you were against affordable housing." I think affordable housing is such a broad term that anyone can say in this city, and I think everyone believes that we need affordable housing, but affordable housing based on what percentage of what mean income? So I want to know, have you thought about these issues? Because I hear people come, I've gone to a lot of forums, and I hear the speakers talk about everyone's in favor of schools, everyone's in favor of affordable housing, of course, but these are complicated problems. And I've worked for developers before. I'm not pro-development of how, I certainly wasn't in favor of the arena, but I want someone to tell me how we can develop certain areas of the city to be able to get money to build affordable housing for childcare workers, restaurant workers, people who live here we've got this Dillon rule. And I'm not hearing anyone talk about specifics about it.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
I'm not an expert on the Dillon rule in Virginia, and I believe the question somebody asked what the Dillon rule is, or at least for us to clarify it. It's my understanding, Carol, you could please correct me, but basically it's a series of laws that basically constrict the ability of local governments, cities, counties, municipalities from creating their own laws on a lot of stuff. Taxation is one of them. All a broad range of things that the state has that power, rather than, and gives it to the locality if they decide to. And there are lots of bills in the legislature to do that in different various ways. But it's a funny thing that people who are in city council and then they become delegates, largely, right? Like they don't want to give up their power either. So it's a really strange and not, in my view, the way to do things. But to answer your direct question, I don't know what all the Dillon rules are on housing, but what I do know is that there is some ability for us to raise revenue to bring in and create programs that help people with rent. We can use our bonding authority, and the city is thinking about that to finance projects that have been stalled because of financing, to bring them on. There are buildings that have been built by the development corporation that are like the one up in off of Glebe in Mount Vernon, which are going to be coming on. Yeah, so and those are great. I mean, I'm all for that. I think that's great stuff. I would look to also trying to find ways that we can do things like limited equity co-ops, which Carol, I bet you know, but other folks, there's one in Alexandria in Charlagua. It's not easy to do. I understand that, but basically the people who live there own a portion of the building. They own a stock or a portion of the building. And therefore, when they move, they get to sell it, and it keeps it doesn't it's limited equity. So they can't sell it for a lot more, but they get some equity and they get a nest egg, and it helps them move on and do other things, and it keeps the price low for the people who are coming in. So that kind of established precedent that I would like to replicate. Shared appreciation mortgages, other kinds of financing stuff for people up to the median income, those kinds of things I would like to see. But I don't, Carol, I can't answer your question on what specifically we can do out that is not already being done that wouldn't require a change in the Dillon rule. But hey, one of the things I know is state level policy. I work on state level policy every day. It's my job. And you got to fight for what you want. And so if we need changes, we need to fight for them too in the legislature. That was too long, but thank you, Carol.
Nate, you're muted.
Sorry. Somebody had to do it at least once on Zoom. Aaron, you're up next, but I was saying I put answers to the Dillon rule, and we'll continue to put links in the chat. So just keep an eye out for those.
Thank you. And Jonathan, I'm down the street from you and so happy to see somebody from Warwick Village running for city council. So thank you. My question is, on the affordable housing, you mentioned that you need a policy that fits the problem, which I totally agree with. One of my biggest issues is, the it's good for affordable housing talking point doesn't oftentimes in my mind really mean what they say it means in terms of will it translate to actual housing availability for people in a more modest income bracket. And my question for you is, do you have ideas about how to kind of challenge the talking points going forward and to get more specific information in the hands of people and the regular citizens in the city who are not necessarily, following city council closely.
Mhm. And can I ask specifically if there's are you talking about the single family zoning, or what if there's a specific instance?
I'm talking about not so much the single family zoning, but for example, the rezoning of places like Warwick Village, where there was the talk about the bonus height for Warwick Village. And part of what I really gets me upset about that is, all the stuff that they were looking at rezoning was the stuff where the most affordable housing in this area currently is. And what I anticipated happening was they would rezone it, developers would come in, they'd tear out the existing affordable housing, and they'd make a bunch of expensive condos that have 1 or 2 affordable housing units. And I don't see that as the solution.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't see it as being honest.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I understand. I don't have great answers for how do you build affordable units and also integrate them into an established neighborhood. It's just it seems hard. And maybe there is a reason why we can get around it. When that came up, the idea of bonus height on Warwick Village houses, I thought that was a very strange thing. That why would you try to do that? That would look crazy. That would can you even physically do that? I didn't know. But I am glad for this group's advocacy on that, because hell, there's been a lot of crazy things happen. They wanted to put a arena down the street from us. So I'm glad that the advocacy from Save Delray was successful in that regard. And I'll tell you, in terms of getting the word out, here's the first thing. These folks are not, I like all of these incumbents. They're great people. I like them all. I don't think they like me running, because I am changing the debate and the structure of this race just by being in it and talking about these things. If I was not in it, they wouldn't be asked and they wouldn't have to answer. And they have an answer. Like they believe, and I don't fault them for this. They believe that even though these houses that are being built in our neighborhoods that are duplexes are expensive, that somehow that in aggregate will lower housing prices for everybody in the city. And if it's done across the region, all across the region. And that is a theory. They have studies to prove that. They have things that they say about it. And listen, that's what they think. But that is not what was sold to us as the elimination of single family zoning, right? That was about affordability. And it just isn't. And so I am going to, it's not the reason why I am running. I am running because I felt I was not listened to, and our neighborhood was not listened to in the debate on the Potomac Yard Arena. I felt that was just a crummy thing to do to our neighborhood. And it was also a bad idea in general. And I wish they had moved away from it earlier in the process and said before it had to be stopped at the state that this maybe either we shouldn't rush this or we should stop. And nobody did. So that's why I'm running. But I also believe that we need to be honest about what these housing policies do and why they do them. And it is very clear that in our neighborhood, which is an example of what will be happening in Beverly Hills and in Seminary Hill, all that, on a small scale, there won't be hundreds and thousands of these, but there will be teardowns, and they will build 2 or 3 units that are more expensive, likely, or as expensive as the house that they replace. And we just use pictures and numbers from Zillow to show that. Like, it's not going to be that hard, and we're going to have to do that. So yes, I do think that I do think it is breaking through. And then when I go canvas in these areas, these single family home areas, they get it too. They're telling me the same thing. I don't even have to talk about it. So I do think that there is a realization that, okay, so that isn't exactly that, but we just need more housing, period. And that is really what the stance is by the incumbents.
Aaron, did that answer your question?
Probably not.
No, I mean, it did. It's the only really part that it didn't fully answer is sort of your thoughts on how you better get the word out. But the answer might be that you don't know because that's hard.
How to get the word out? I mean, I'm saying it in forums, and I'm saying it door to door, and I have a little bit of money that I'm campaigning with, and I don't know. I do need this group to also talk about it, and to tell your friends, and to, share the pictures of the house on Euler or 404 Windsor or whatever. Like, that is the evidence that that policy was just not the right one to fit an affordability hole. But yeah, it's going to take us all.
All right.
Thanks.
Karen, I think you raised your hand next.
I did, if that's okay.
Oh, of course.
So Jonathan, Nate mentioned that Save Delray was started because of 2525 Mount Vernon Avenue, when we read in the Washington Business Journal that Bonaventure was going to develop it into this big apartment building with balconies looking into children's bedrooms, and no handicap parking and no place for trash, but maybe there'd be a couple restaurants there. I mean, it was just kind of a mess. And then, you got involved in this race because of the arena. So my question to you is, what should go at 2525 Mount Vernon Avenue, and what should go at Potomac Yard? Because they're both really valuable parcels.
Well, let me start with the easy one for me anyway, which is the Potomac Yard arena, or the Potomac Yard area. And to me, I didn't find fault with the small area plan that exists there, which is mixed use, high density, and an entertainment component. I'm good with that. I'm also good with other things. It's okay if we need to switch that plan up a little bit, and if we can get high tech or an innovation, campus extended, that's good with me too. I'm not looking to prescribe what should go into Potomac Yard, because I don't live there, and also it had a plan that I think people are generally okay with.
But
and
Jonathan,
you're right that
if you win a seat on council, you're going to have a say. I mean,
sure,
right? I mean, that's kind of our process. So you're going to have to figure out what you think should be there.
well, yeah, and there's not a proposal for something that to tell you whether or not I would like it. But what I guess I'm saying, and maybe this isn't enough, Karen, but the existing plan is what I think is appropriate for Potomac Yard.
I mean, that plan's been in effect for what, 30 years now, 25 years? Chris, do you know? I mean, it's been around for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So your answer is
High density,
historically been
higher
planned for that.
density around high density around the metro station. Hopefully there's an entertainment component to it. We get the school, and we go from there. And if it comes out that we think that there's a reason to develop another type of park or green space, or hey, you know, this there should be we have the money, let's create some sort of innovative affordable housing project there, that would be fine with me too.
What about Mount Vernon Avenue?
Yeah, so I think it's not appropriate for that building to go up higher than it probably already is. In terms of a use, people have talked about brewery or a youth center, or using it for some civic function, which would seem appropriate to me too. Or a larger business that could go in there, but it seems an odd. It would have to be reconfigured quite a bit, I'd say. If it can be turned into some housing without making it, 4 stories high, or replicate another plan that was a failure, I'd be open to additional housing along the avenue. But I continue to think that the most important parts of the avenue are the small businesses along it. And if we can get another small business into that space, maybe 2, 3, 4, I don't know, maybe an incubator for small businesses. I'm not really sure. It is an office building and could be turned into something that could resemble a co-working space for entrepreneurs or freelancers or people who work in the neighborhood who work from home at reduced cost. I don't know. I'm open to quite a bit of things, but the zoning process and the development process seems to me to be a powerful tool, and 2, not being utilized enough to get the best product out of them. So that's what will be focused on learning more about after the primary, and certainly before the election. And I'm learning along the way too. Tomorrow I'm talking to the folks who live around 301 North Fairfax, and I've learned a lot about that building and what the problems are there. So I'm I don't want to prescribe what I want there. I want the neighbors to prescribe it, and along with people who might be able to utilize it in a way that benefits them, makes them money, or creates some housing, or is a civic function that we can all get behind.
Thank you.
All right. Does anybody else have a question? If not, I've got a little bit of a pivot on something that you said earlier. I'll assume I don't. Oh, there. Yep. I'm guessing, Kirk, is that thumbs up? You've got a question, or thumbs up?
Oh, sorry. That was supposed to be a hand raise. Sorry.
Cool. Go for it. Thumbs up is a hand raise. So.
Okay, there we go. I'm on my phone, so I apologize.
No
Hey, I just had a question the other night at the Delray Business Association forum, or whatever you want to call that. The candidate or the incumbents were very emphatic in their demand that they were listened to as a part of that they listened to the citizens as part of all the processes, both for zoning for housing and the arena. And Jonathan, you had mentioned that they hadn't been. I happen to agree with you. They did a lot of talking. They didn't do a lot of listening. And I'm sorry, just staying up late listening to people give comments at city council without sitting down and talking to people and listening to debate. To me, it was very, very frustrating. How do you see doing that different if you're elected?
Yeah. I am again, I'm going to sound like I'm apologizing for them. And I said what I said, and I don't apologize for saying that I didn't feel like I was listened to, because I didn't. They do put in a lot of hours. They speak with a lot of people. They do their research too. So I want to appreciate the work that they do put in, and that they will take generally meetings with people, but they have not allowed themselves to be vulnerable with anybody in public. That to me is a difference. I am like, Karen doesn't like my answer about Potomac Yard. That's fine. We need to keep doing that in public where
I didn't
people are-
dislike your answer. I was just pushing you for a little more specificity.
Well, I
That's
appreciate
all.
it,
That wasn't
Karen.
a
I'm just,
dislike.
this is what I'm talking about.
We should
They will
hang
not
out
go
more,
into a,
Jonathan.
sorry.
We should hang out more.
Yeah, we should. They won't allow themselves to be vulnerable or be pushed by citizens, and that to me is not right. And it's why they are really like, I don't think anything I said was all that rude, or, well, I shouldn't have said the thing about them that they got to go. Like, that was obnoxious, and I'm going to apologize to them for that. But they do seem upset and offended when somebody says you're not listening. And I kind of get what they're coming from. What I am going to do is allow myself to be vulnerable to the citizenry in public. They are in private, but they won't do it in public. Secondly, the meetings and the pop-ups and the meet and greets and all that stuff is great, but it is passive in a way. It relies on somebody coming to them. So I really do, and other city council people don't need to do this, but I really do enjoy going door to door and talking to folks. And I'm not going to stop doing that. And for example, there are people who have been talking to me about, and I've understood that there's a problem with this building on Fairfax Street downtown. I went to people who I had no idea what they thought, and I talked to them. So I do think it's important that we also, in addition to doing the normal receiving of information from people who want to talk to you and tell you what they think, in addition to the data that creates, you want to go and you want to find out what's really going on and talking to people who wouldn't necessarily come to any meetings as well. And that's I think important thing that I'm committed to doing, is to spending a few hours every week or so going door to door, or finding somebody who is in an apartment complex to help me and go talk to folks, because you can't do it anyway else.
Kirk, did that answer your question there?
It did. Thank you.
All right. Looks like Aaron and then Carter.
Oh, that was actually a real thumbs up, and appreciate the door-to-door
I'll
approach.
come knock on your door, Aaron. We'll be fine.
All right.
Carter. Exciting.
Okay. Thank you. Jonathan, I applaud you for saying council listens. I think we've always said there's a difference between listen and hearing. And most of us have never experienced being truly heard by council. They listen and say, thank you, and we're doing what we planned to do all along. So I think that's a common trait. But my question has to do with the article in the Post where you all were asked to weigh in on different subjects. And I don't live in Delray. I live out off Quaker Lane. And so Duke Street is a concern for us in this part of the city. The question said they've, we all know they've approved transit on Duke and Beauregard. And the question was asked, would you expand dedicated bus lanes? And you answered yes. And so I am curious where you think beyond Duke and Beauregard we need more expanded BRT lanes in the city. So that's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Carter. And just know that it wasn't just me who didn't like being pushed into yes or no answers on all that stuff. I mean, I answered that way, Carter, because I do think absent rail, BRTs are a good way to get people out of cars and also move people around the city or into different jurisdictions. So I don't know where the next one should be, but it probably is somewhere from Landmark, where they are planning I think, a major transportation hub. Now, that also is not necessarily, I know there's a lot of problems where you are. Quaker, Duke, West Taylor, it's nightmare daily. And I'm not going to support a BRT if that's going to make it worse on people who live there. So, I would like, again, I need a little bit of grace here because I don't know everything I need to know about these things. But my intention is to expand transit where we can to meet the needs of people who don't have money or need transit to get to work or because they like it. That's fine too. While also making sure that neighborhoods are not just listened to, but get deference in many ways, right? They come before the needs of people who don't live here or who just want to bike through the neighborhood or whatever, right? Like that's to me more important. So I don't have I feel like every one of these I end up saying I don't know, but I hope that answer suffices for you, Carter.
Oh yeah, it does. We just are not convinced that the when you think of BRT, you think of a continuous segment of a bus route that might actually help. The acknowledgement on Duke Street is that's not possible. So now we're creating a center lane somewhere, a curb lane somewhere. We're closing access roads, making them one way, doing all this to save maybe 5 minutes or something. I think most people think, well, if that's going to cost $87 million for that and create more traffic nightmares on Duke Street to save the buses 5 minutes, I don't know that that's a viable trade-off, but that conversation apparently doesn't matter in the city because the decision obviously has been made and that's what they're going to do, but it's a whole lot of money for something that is totally unproven to be successful. So
well, Carter, I appreciate you saying that. My understanding was that there's a lot of work left to do, and so there could be changes to it. You're telling me no, so I need to figure that out or learn more about it from you or someone else. But one of the things that I am interested in doing is that, okay, so they get their plans together, they get the renderings, they do the studies, they got it all together, they got their plan. That's still how many years off, right? I don't know, 3, 4, probably. Or maybe it's shorter, I'm not sure. But I want to find out, and there are other people on council who think this too. We got to help y'all now, and it is very hard. I understand. Like John Taylor Chapman lives there too. He cares about this a lot. So how do we make it better for y'all in the short term and not have to rely on something years away? Is something I am certainly interested in.
okay, well, thanks, just appreciate it.
All right, well, I'm going to call for the last question here, and it looks like Aaron raised her hand. So Aaron, I guess I'll turn that over to you, and then Jonathan, if you want to go ahead and leave us with any parting comments at the end, that'd be great. I just want to be respectful of everybody's time and close out of here at the top of the hour.
I'm happy to defer to anybody who hasn't had a chance to ask a question. But if nobody else wants to, my question is, one of the things we've heard from another candidate in one of these forums was the need to have 4 votes to do anything. Are there other people on the slate that you think you would be able to work with in order to come up with 4 votes together?
On what is there an issue you're thinking about? Maybe I shouldn't even ask that. I mean,
I mean in general that you think you would be able to align with versus you're kind of coming in as like the outsider.
yeah, feels that way. Yeah. Listen, I've had lots of conversations with lots of these candidates about a lot of things. And I think there are incumbents that I certainly want to work with and have intention to work with them if they win. And I am not looking to upset the apple cart or culture or anything. That is not my intention. I am I am just being who I am, and I am not afraid of looking like I'm upset at something that the council did, because I kind of am. And I'm probably not running again. Like, I don't have a future in politics. I work in politics. I don't want it to be elected. So it is okay for me to do the things that I think are right. But I also know that I have to get things done, and I want to work with anybody who's elected, whether or not they liked me running. There are people who are non-incumbents who I also like very much. I'm not going to give you any names because they probably don't want me to say it. But there are definitely non-incumbents who are good people, who are honest about where they are, and I think are movable on many things. But yeah, Aaron, I appreciate the question. I sometimes get it. So I'm glad to be able to tell you. I think that I don't know what'll happen. We're not polling, we don't know, but I'm telling you, I think there will be some differences on council come January, and there will be incumbents who win, I'm sure, but there will be maybe a different vibe in some ways.
Thank you.
Well, does anybody else have a question? Otherwise, if there's any parting thoughts you want to give Jonathan, but I'll give everybody a chance to. All right, looks like you're good for whatever parting thoughts you'd like to leave us with here as we draw to the end of our hour together.
Oh goodness. I mean, I appreciate this conversation, and I'm learning from people every time I talk to them. Please reach out to me if you want to continue to have conversations about anything. I live on Ansel Street, just around the corner from the artist cottage, and you probably see me out walking my dog around town, around Delray. So I am accessible and hope to talk to all of you again. I do need support in this race. This is not going to be easy. And if you appreciate where I'm coming from and agree with all or most or some of what I'm saying, I could use your help. Volunteer, get the word out with your networks, donate money if you can. All of it is needed. I'm going to go into the last few weeks with a clear mandate, and I'm going to also be, the odd man out. Nobody's going to help me from the establishment. So I need the people to do as who are able and willing to help. And I think there's good reason to believe that Alexandria can unite and be the kind of place we all want it to be. I think we're also an amazing city that has a lot of resources, and we should be proud of where we live and hope that we can make it better by including everybody. And that, for me, that starts by listening to neighbors, working families, and the small businesses that make our neighborhood certainly a vibrant place to be. So that's why I'm running. If I win, great. If I don't, that's okay too. I got other things to do. But I do hope that there was going to be change in this city, and I won't stop fighting about that.
All right. Well, thanks for spending the time with us today, and giving us the opportunity to get to know you a little bit better. Good luck on the future endeavors here as you continue to campaign in the next couple weeks, and hopefully we'll see you around Delray with your dog.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.